Frid och shalom och välkomna till uppdateringen den 23/1. Och det är under tacksamhet till Gud som jag frambär det här. Och idag ska vi se vad vi ska ha. Jag har en liten lista här som vi ska läsa upp för er då. Jag har lite klipp som vanligt. Men jag var inne på en hemsida precis nyss då där det står så här. Tänk att stenarna ropar som Jesus sa. Och Bibeln bekräftas. Den är sann och håller att lita på. Det stod så här på den här hemsidan. I Gamla testamentet berättas om Hasael, konung av Damaskus, som invaderade och förstörde filisternas viktigaste stad Gat på vägen till Jerusalem. Och nu cirka 3000 år senare har ett forskarteam använt de senaste metoderna för att bekräfta att staden verkligen blev förstörd i ett hav av lågor som verkar stämma överens med den bibliska berättelsen. Cirka 30 kilometer öster om den israeliska staden Askelon finns ruiner som arkeologer länge har trott vara resterna av Gat eller Tel Es-Safi som staden heter historiskt. Nu visar koldateringar att byggnaderna på platsen blev ruiner under mycket höga temperaturer omkring 830 år före Kristus. År 2011 publicerades en studie där forskarna hävdade att staden successivt hade förvandlats till ruiner under en längre tidsperiod, vilket då skulle motbevisa Bibelns berättelse om att den här staden Gat och jämnades med marken under denna kampanj. Forskarna medgav då att tegelstenarna i ruinerna visade tecken på att ha bränts, men de trodde att dessa hade bränts i en ugn för att härdas. Detta påstående stred också mot den vanliga uppfattning bland arkeologerna att ugnsbrända lertegelstenar först anlände till Mellanöstern med romarna efter år 66 före Kristus. Jordens magnetfält avslöjar däremot ett bibliskt eldhav. För att testa både de kontroversiella påståendena uppfann israeliska forskare, ja vem annars, från universitetet i Tel Aviv en ny metod. De undersökte magnetiska partiklarna i de tusentals år gamla tegelstenar. Ruiner av tegelstenar och sand. Den här nya studien visar också att tegelstenarna troligen inte brändes i ugnar från Mellanöstern förrän romarna introducerade detta på 100-talet. Leran som tegelstenarna tillverkades av innehåller miljontals ferromagnetiska partiklar, mineraler med magnetiska egenskaper som beter sig som små kompasser, förklarar en av forskarna bakom denna nya studie, Yoav Vaknin. I ett pressmeddelande: när partiklarna upphettas till mer än 200 grader så frigörs deras magnetiska signaler och de orienterar sig mot jordens magnetfält. Och genom att värma upp några av tegelstenarna i en speciell ugn som neutraliserar påverkan från jordens magnetfält fann forskarna att den ferromagnetiska partiklarna som var i dessa tegelstenar alla pekade åt exakt samma håll. Och detta bevisar då att den höga temperaturen måste ha kommit exakt samtidigt. Det kan det bara ha gjort i en stor brand, vilket den bibliska beskrivningen beskriver alltså. Tack och lov. Den nya studien visar också att tegelstenarna ursprungligen torkas under den gassande solen och inte brändes i ugnar. Sen citerar jag ifrån Telegram. Hamas sa just att frisläppandet av gisslan endast skulle ske under följande villkor. Kriget skulle omedelbart sluta. Ett fullständigt tillbakadragande av den israeliska armén från Gaza. Frisläppandet av alla palestinska fångar, inklusive dem som dömts för morden i terrorattacker. internationella garantier för att Hamas ledarskap kommer att fortsätta styra Gaza och inte kommer att bli en måltavla för Israel. Har ni hört på maken? Hamas kräver praktiskt taget Israels kapitulation. Och det här kommer troligen ifrån ledaren Sinwar, alltså Gazas slaktare som han även kallat, som leder folket i Gaza i detta egna självmordsuppdrag. Dessa förhållanden borde göra varje anständig människa fullständigt rasande. Och det här borde vara en snackis för varje politiker, media och nyhetskanal. Det bör heller inte finnas några uppmaningar till eld upphör och inga veckovisa protester när man har fått hört dessa villkor som Hamas ställer, vilket är fullständigt horribelt, vänner. Sen ska vi lyssna på en intressant geopolitisk utläggning av Tom Nash som jag tycker är väldigt bra på det här området. Han och James Cadiz, de är nog bland de bättre på det här. Han målar upp världsläget på ett mycket intressant sätt i ett klipp som vi har lagt in här. Sen har vi då Väckelsesång också. Jag ska se vad det kan vara här då. Vad har vi för väckelsesång? Ja, då har jag tagit reda på vad det var för sång vi skulle höra här med Kent Ronny Axelsson. Han sjunger väldigt bra den här sången. Saliga visshet, Jesus min. Den kan man ju sjunga på varje dag om det är så, för att det är ju så sant. Halleluja, man är viss, man är salig i sitt innersta när Jesus bor där. Och det är man ju faktiskt både på höjderna och i dalarna, säger Bibeln. Så Gud välsignar alla, så hörs vi under dagen.
Specifically, over the past few days, the United States is now an all-hands-on-deck approach trying to solve once and for all the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by offering a new solution called the two-state solution, a Palestinian state next to the Israeli state.
There is no way to solve their long-term challenges, to provide lasting security, and there is no way to solve the short-term challenges of rebuilding Gaza and establishing governance in Gaza and providing security for Gaza without the establishment of a Palestinian state.
An idea as ancient as the entire conflict itself, this two-state solution is not new. It's a repackaged, rebranded idea that's being resold to you like Madden 2023, when in fact it's Madden 2009 with just updated rosters, pretty much.
It's more vital than ever that both Israelis and Palestinians find a way to get back to the table and begin negotiating a process whereby they can create two states that are living side by side in peace and security.
This idea is not only ancient, it's actually pretty funny because it failed almost as many times as the Israeli and Palestinians went to war with each other. So what's going on here? Why is the United States trying to promote and rebrand and repackage this old two-state solution idea? And why is it sounding so urgent? What's the urgency? What's going on here? Well, everything has to be understood in the context of politics. It's all a game of interest. You see, the United States just entered an election year. And one thing you never want in an election year is a hot mess overseas. This is something that needs to be mopped up, cleaned up, and wrapped up so that the campaign can focus on economy, on internal issues, and it's not healthy for the Biden administration to have an active conflict in the Middle East ongoing during an election year, especially one that is not as popular as you would think. A lot of people around the world are angry at Israel. A lot of people around the world are angry at Biden. A lot of people in his own party, in his own base, are angry at him for supporting Israel. Now, he has to wrap it up. He has to clean it up because on the surface of it, he has a lot to sell. Now, in his campaign against Trump or whomever, he's going to have a lot to show for. He's going to show that inflation went down from 9% to 3%. Unemployment numbers did not go up. This administration, whether this was a fluke or their actual doing, actually managed to land the economy and lower inflation without causing a recession. And that's a selling ticket they're going to use to try and campaign against Trump or whomever comes out of the Republican primary. Now, I don't know who's going to win the elections in the United States. nor do I think anyone in the United States is going to vote based on foreign affairs, based on what's going on in Israel. But I understand the idea of a hot mess that needs to be mopped away so that we can focus on the things that people actually care about. Now, this is why you see the United States is now harshly pushing this two-state solution. And the idea here is, let's set up a second state. Let's give the power to the current existing Palestinian Authority. Let's import it into Gaza. And then let's just magically hope that the Israelis and the Palestinians will never go to war. And from this point on, because the Palestinians now will have a state, they will sit around the campfire and just sing Kumbaya every night. And of course, as you understand, this is a fantasy, and that's never going to happen. So the problem with this idea is that the claim here is that this is going to stop wars between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Once the Palestinians have their own state, have Gaza and have the West Bank, they will no longer be interested in going to war against the Israelis, because why would they? It's not rational, right? Well, this is the problem when you try to rationalize with Western logic Middle Eastern conflicts. Now, allow me to explain. The problem with this plan, the problem with this assumption of a peace coming out of the two-state solution is that there's zero chance of this thing would work. Number one, it hasn't worked in the past. They've actually tried this. In 2005, the Israelis cleared all settlements from Gaza. Every single person that was not a Palestinian, soldiers, civilians, buildings, everything was removed, and the Israelis pulled out completely out of Gaza. And the idea was to see, it's kind of a test case, what happens in Gaza before they go for the West Bank, which is a much larger region, much more complicated with settlements, much more complicated militarily. So let's try it on a smaller scale in Gaza. Let's see if this thing becomes Singapore, because they have the beach, they have all these attractions. It's such a beautiful place, right? Let's see if the Palestinians make it into a Singapore, or they make it into a Terroristan or Terroristan. I don't know how to say a terror country. Terroristan. Let's go with Terroristan. And immediately what happened is, within a year after the Israelis pulled out, hoping to see the formation of a new Singapore on the beaches of Gaza, what happened is that Hamas took over. They kicked out the Palestinian Authority violently, murdering every single one of them, and they haven't had an election since. Not that they need to, because as it stands right now, the support for Hamas, even after what happened October 7th, even after 100 days of war in Gaza, the support for Hamas in Gaza and in the West Bank is about 70%. Now, there's also about 70% of them who hate Iran and Hezbollah right now for basically betraying them and not helping them, but that's a topic for a different video. So this hasn't worked in the past. What the Israelis got when they gave Gaza their own country is, number one, Hamas going to power. Number two, complete militarization of Gaza. Number three, terror attacks coming out of Gaza into Israel, in the beginning in small scale, then in increasing scale, and then October 7th, which was probably the worst terror attack we have ever seen as a humanity. So here's the actual truth about what happened in Gaza. The Israelis pull out, Gaza gets taken over by Hamas, and it becomes a terror country. Now, the Israelis have to blockade it because they have to prevent weapons of getting in there, which of course was not very effective, because what the Palestinians done is digging tunnels all the way into Egypt and importing a whole little army into Gaza under the nose of the Israelis, and with the full cooperation and the bribing of the Egyptian soldiers on the border who played along. Now, obviously, this is not a knock on the Egyptian army in general. I'm just saying, look, the guys who were stationed at the border got paid very handsomely by the Hamas people to look the other way. They brought in lots of weapons, lots of cars, lots of equipment, and lots of civilian stuff, actually. If you go to Gaza before October 7th, you would have found a lot of Mercedes AMGs, a lot of electronics, a lot of stuff that came in from Egypt. So the blockade idea is a myth. It's a lie. While the Israelis did actually impose a blockade, the Palestinians literally broke it by digging under and going into Egypt. So the Israelis looked at this and said, well, this was not a good experience for us. Then they tried a different approach. They tried to appease Hamas. They tried to pay them money and try to give them a lot of perks. A lot of Palestinians from Gaza actually went into work in Israel, and the numbers kept going up. In fact, on October 7th, when the terror attacks happened, that number was at an all-time high. So the idea was, okay, we can't fight them, we can't blockade them. Let's just have Hamas become a civilian organization. Let's support them, let's pay them, let's make sure that they become a government. So they care about their people so much, they're not interested in fighting. Of course, that also blew up in their face on October 7th. So there's literally 0% of this thing working based on the fact that this was tried and attempted and failed miserably. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and hoping for a different result. Now look, even if this thing works, even if the Palestinian Authority, which will be de facto installed by the Israelis and the US in the eyes of the Palestinian street, even if that government will be accepted by the Palestinian people and not get thrown out by Hamas like they've done last time, here's the other problem. While Hamas is openly saying, look, we do not accept this two-state solution. They can say whatever they want. As long as we're around, we're going to keep fighting until every single square inch of that land that is now called Israel is ours. And we're not going to stop. Two-state solution, three-state solution, we don't care. We're going to take everything. It's a zero-sum game for us. So even if you put that to the side, and you assume that the Palestinian Authority manages to cling on to power in this new government in Gaza, here's the problem. The Palestinian Authority actually does not have a different goal than Hamas, which is the destruction and elimination of the State of Israel. It's not me speculating, it's literally in their charter. It's in the textbooks in their schools. Every single terrorist that has carried out attacks against Israelis and died, that man's family gets paid every single month from the Palestinian Authority to the rest of their natural lives, including the October 7th terrorists. Yes, the October 7th terrorist families are getting paid now by the Palestinian Authority for the heroics they've done. Heroics, right? So the idea here is that the Palestinian Authority is aiming for the same goal as Hamas, which is the destruction of Israel. The only difference is they're smarter about this. They're going to play the long con game. They understand that defeating Israel in a military campaign for the Palestinians is virtually impossible. Their thought process is, let's try and get some achievements politically, by diplomacy. Let's get as much land as we can by pretending to play along with this peace. And that's been long documented. They're not even trying to hide this. There's multiple records of Palestinian Authority senior officials admitting in the open that the whole idea of the peace agreements to reach the 1967 borders is to get Israel to accept a border structure which will not be defendable in the military campaign the day the Palestinian Authority decides to go crazy and attack Israel. And I'm not joking here. This is literally the plan that is being promoted right now by the United States. Gaza will be ruled from now on by the Palestinian Authority. Now, the Palestinian Authority that is not respected, not accepted, and not validated on the Palestinian street, the Palestinian Authority that is paying terrorists that have carried out terror attacks against Israelis, a Palestinian Authority whose stated goal is the destruction of Israel, who admitted that the peace process is just a ruse to get better borders before the actual attack. That Palestinian Authority is now being handed Gaza by the US government as a way to create stability and peace in the region. And the crazy part about it, that in case that Palestinian Authority fails, which is most likely the outcome, it will be replaced by Hamas, which has an outspoken goal of destroying Israel and has shown their full intent and capability to do so. And that is what's now being promoted by the US to push Israel into a suicidal arrangement, which is literally just being put in place to help this administration make it through these elections somehow against Donald Trump. In fact, this plan might be a worse foreign affairs decision than the entire Barack Obama policy in the Middle East. And that's saying a lot. The crazy part about this is that there's an actual plan that might work, that is being completely ignored by the US government because of its complexity and the fact that it is time-consuming, even though it will provide better security for both the Palestinians and the Israelis long-term. That plan is actually described in a whole video.
Saliga visshet, Jesus är min. Han är min herde, kallar mig sin. Saliga visshet, allt är nu väl. Jesus har löst min kropp och min själ. Han är min glädje, han är min sång. Honom jag prisar livsdagen lång. Han blir min lovsång evigt hos Gud. Han är min brudgum, jag är hans brud. Allting jag uppgav, allting jag vann. Evighetsdagen härligt upprann. Himlen är öppen, änglar från Gud bringar till jorden frälsningens bud. Han är min glädje, han är min sång. Honom jag prisar livsdagen lång. Ja, han är min lovsång evigt hos Gud. Han är min brudgum, jag är hans brud. Nu kan jag salig sjunga hans pris. Själen nu njuter i himmelens spis. Jag är ett stoft och renad av Gud. Jesus är min och jag är hans brud. För han är min glädje, han är min sång. Honom jag prisar livsdagen lång. Han blir min lovsång evigt hos Gud. Han är min brudgum, jag är hans brud. Döp med Guds ande efter hans ord. Saliga visshet, himmel på jord. Eld på min tunga, eld i min barm. Han har mig fyllt med kärlek så varm. Han är min glädje, han är min sång. Honom jag prisar